This Friday, 26th September 2025, the Finance and National Planning Minister, Dr. Stumbeko Msokotwane, will be presenting the 2026 National Budget. The National Budget is the single most important policy tool of the government, which sets the development trajectory over a given period. It presents the roadmap on how the government intends to implement various policies, projects, and programs through the allocation of resources to various public institutions to bridge the inequalities in society. For NGOCC, the interest in the national budget lies in the need to have gender-responsive budgets to ensure that the needs and interests of individuals from different social groups, such as women, youth, and persons with disabilities, are addressed in expenditure and revenue policies. Therefore, the following are some of NGOCC's expectations in the 2026 national budget. Firstly, around the measures to cushion the impacts of load shedding. As we have stated before, the current energy crisis has become an unbearable burden. The widespread electricity deficit and its attendant effects pose a direct threat to the productivity, incomes, and overall livelihoods of vulnerable populations, especially young women and girls. Therefore, we expect the Minister of Finance to use his address to provide a clear time-bound plan that outlines feasible mechanisms for true energy diversification and investment in accessible and affordable renewable solutions. The government should prioritize investing in robust and transparent systems that enhance compliance across all tax types rather than continuously increasing tax rates for the relatively few taxpayers who are already compliant. Such reforms should not only broaden the tax base, but should also ensure fairness in revenue collection, thereby reducing over-reliance in a limited pool of compliant individuals and businesses. Zambia is endowed with rich mineral resources dotted across the country, yet the exploration remains in the hands of unregulated small-scale miners, costing the nation huge sums of money in revenue. Therefore, we expect the government to provide mechanisms to expedite the effective legislation of mining activities nationwide and the legalization of these activities. This will also increase the government's resource base and grow the local mining economy. Lastly, the country has not fully exploited the option of revenue generated from carbon credit sales. Given that the country is facing challenges related to climate change, with rising temperatures and erratic rainfall patterns affecting agriculture, NGOCC expects the Minister of Finance to introduce a tax on carbon credit sales in carbon markets. In terms of enhancing poverty reduction mechanisms, the Living Conditions Monitoring Survey 2022 shows that Zambia's poverty rate stands at 60%, with 78% of the rural population living in poverty, and that female-headed households are disproportionately poor, accounting for 60% of the poor, which is a clear indication that poverty indeed bears a female face. We expect the Minister of Finance to reduce the value-added tax, VAT, from 16% to 14%. The lower tax will reduce the cost of living and cushion the poor and vulnerable, especially children and women. Further, we expect the zero-rate ceiling for the pay-as-you-earn to be increased from 5,100 to 5,500, and the last tax bracket to be reduced from the current 35% to 30%. This adjustment would cushion employees against the high cost of living, which disproportionately affects women, most of whom carry the dual responsibility of formal employment and managing household welfare. High pay-as-you-earn rates erode disposable incomes, limiting households' ability to meet basic needs such as food, healthcare, education, and childcare sectors where women's unpaid work is already heavily stretched. By lowering the pay-as-you-earn and VAT rates, the government would not only ease the financial pressure on households, but also promote gender-sensitive economic policies that acknowledge and respond to the lived realities of women as home managers and key contributors to national development, while stimulating consumption, improving household welfare, and contributing to sustainable and inclusive economic growth. NGOCC also expects the Minister to offer a reduced turnover tax rate of 2.5% for registered women-owned small and medium enterprises. For the first 3 to 5 years, women's participation in formal business ownership will increase, especially in urban areas. In terms of resourcing for the Anti-Gender-Based Violence Fund, over the years, gender-based violence, GBV, has sadly gained prominence in the nation to worrying levels. Unfortunately, there has been no corresponding resource allocation to respond to this increase in GBV cases. The Anti-GBV Fund has not been established, and the infrastructure, such as the GBV shelters, remain adequate. Therefore, we expect the Minister of Finance to demonstrate the government's commitment towards curbing GBV. Allocations to key sectors: education, health, agriculture, and social protection. As NGOCC, we expect the budget to increase allocation towards the education sector from the current 14.5% of the national budget to the bare minimum of 20% as per the Dakar Declaration, to which Zambia is a party. Funds should target school infrastructure, especially the building of boarding schools, to enhance retention and completion rates and reduce the long distances that the learners cover. Subsequently, this will reduce the vulnerability of girls who are not accommodated within the school. Further, we expect recruitment of more teachers to reduce the teacher-pupil ratio. Especially in the wake of the free education policy, the school feeding program should be enhanced to ensure that vulnerable learners fully benefit from educational opportunities. In the health sector, Zambia is among the member nations that have committed to allocating at least 15% of their annual budget to improve the health sector. We therefore expect the government to implement this threshold by increasing the allocation to the health sector, providing adequate medicines and more infrastructure, and recruiting more health personnel, including midwives. Further, NGOCC is desirous that the minister spells out concrete steps that government has made to address period poverty through the provision of free sanitary towels for all women and girls in both rural and urban areas. In addition, we are aware that the agriculture sector is the biggest employer of women, especially in rural areas. Therefore, we expect resources to be allocated towards the recruitment of extension officers and the provision of input and incentives for their farmers, especially by investing in drought-resistant crops, given our recent experience. Lastly, we appreciate the notable increase in social cash transfer over time. However, NGOCC expects the minister to consider an increase in the social cash transfer, both in value and in reach, proportionate to the prevailing high cost of living. Concerning withholding tax on selected dividends, NGOCC expects the Minister of Finance to remove the withholding tax on dividends paid by savings and credit cooperatives, SACCOs, and individual investors in government bonds, which are currently at 15% and 20% respectively. This is because the majority of cooperatives tend to attract the most vulnerable, including women. This will promote financial inclusion by encouraging more women to invest in SACCOs and government bonds, ultimately contributing to the national gross domestic product. Legal and policy reform. NGOCC is hopeful that adequate funds will be allocated in the 2026 national towards the establishment of the Gender Equity and Equality Commission, as provided for in the Constitution of Zambia Amendment No. 2 of 2016. We are also desirous to see an allocation towards the actualization of Article 60 of the Constitution, which requires the political parties law. This law will provide for enhanced representation of women, youth, and persons with disabilities in leadership roles. In conclusion, NGOCC expects the Minister of Finance to deliver a gender-responsive budget that will ensure that the unique needs of women, men, and girls and boys are considered, without leaving anyone behind. We expect fair allocations to the education, health, agriculture, and mining sectors to ensure citizens, especially the youth, are employed.